Welcome to the Record Searchlight's live forum on Measure B, the initiative on the November ballot, asking voters whether they approve a land sale between the City of Reading and the Foundation for 14 acres next to the Turtle Bay Exploration Park and Museum. We want to thank Mike Warren, President and CEO of Turtle Bay, and Tom Curato with the Northeastern California Building and Construction Trades Council for being with us today. And we also welcome our live audience watching on Reading.com. I'm Carole Ferguson, the managing editor at the Record Searchlight, and I'll be moderating today's discussion. We invite our live audience to participate today by tweeting using the hashtag ReadingB. That will flow into our discussion that you will see under the story on Reading.com. And we will also take some questions from the audience that will glean from that feed to ask Mr. Warren and Mr. Curato today. So I would like to start the forum by explaining a little bit about how it's going to go. It'll be in 3 parts. Mr. Warren and Mr. Curato will each have 2 minutes to give an overview of their positions on Measure B. That will be followed by a series of moderated questions. And again, each gentleman will have 2 minutes to. We'll then wrap up with closing statements by each of them. And again, audience, you are invited to participate. Tweet using the hashtag ReadingB and follow along on our story on Reading.com. It's live now. So let's begin with Mike Warren's opening statement.
The Turtle Bay Exploration Park started in the early 1990s when the City Council in 1992 incentivized the museums that were under the city and operated by the city to go out on their own. The incentive was an agreement for 2 55-year terms, or 110 years, that if the museums can and operate on their own, then the 60 acres south of the river by the monolith, all around the monolith there, would be under the use of Turtle Bay. The museums got together and through a lot of effort by volunteers formed the Alliance of Museums and then ultimately Turtle Bay. The incentive was that they had to put in at least $5 million of improvements. From there, of course, there was much more improvements, about $50 million in total. That was in consideration of rent, and so if the $5 million was the incentive, that was paid for 10 times over. The next step was to operate the museum, a 35,000 square foot museum, and the forest camp and the arboretum, all of that under one hat. We had done so, but the city had paid for operations as much as $690,000 a year. In 2010, it was down to just under $300,000, but in 2010, or a fiscal year for the city, 9-10, they said we can no longer afford to help Turtle Bay in terms of operations. Hence, we had to do something to make up for that loss of income, and we, through a series of studies, looked at the possibility of a hotel. And that is how the hotel came about, to supplement what the city had no longer been able to pay.
Well, thank you for that. And now, Tom Curato, your opening statement.
Thank you. I would like to stress 2 concepts today. Number 1, that we are here to talk about Measure B. Measure B is about a land sale. One item I would like to stress is that this land sale does not need to go through in order to build this hotel. Measure B, again, is about a land sale. You have heard and you will continue to hear a lot of distractions. Distractions about Turtle Bay, about tax revenues to the city, about prevailing wage, about jobs for the community. Every time you hear those, I want you to think distractions, because those are nothing more than distractions to take you off of the issue, which is a land sale. Measure B is about approving the City Council's decision on a vote of 3-2 whether or not to sell this land to the McConnell Foundation for pennies on the dollar, based upon instructions to the appraiser written by the buyer. And we believe that this is not something that should be done. If I were going to buy your house, you would not let me write the instructions to the appraiser to determine the value of your house, and we don't believe that it should be done here. I would also like to stress the fact that most of what I am going to say today is on the ReadingRevolt.com webpage. Very important that you go there and look at that. The fact check article that came out recently had both the Turtle Bay webpage and our webpage. This morning I checked the Turtle Bay webpage. There's a list of statements. Under their frequently asked questions page, there's not one single document backing up anything they say. If you go to readingrevolt.com, you will find over 35 documents backing up what we say, and we believe it is very important that you spend time on that webpage and become educated on this issue. And once again, stay focused on the real issue, which is the land sale. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, now let's get to the questions. The first question, does the passage of Measure B and the building of the hotel guarantee the future of Turtle Bay? Let's start with Mike Warren.
When the hotel is operating, hotel and restaurant, 130-room, four-star hotel, we've looked very carefully, and when I say we, I mean people that are in the profession, such as the Starwood Company that is the parent company to Sheraton, such as the banks, and our economic analysis done by companies that analyze hotels and restaurants. They've all given us fairly good numbers on occupancy, room rate, and what the hotel and restaurant will provide to Turtle Bay will go a long ways towards sustainability. Will it be the end-all? No. It's a step in the right direction. It'll help pay for some of the needed improvements. We're talking about facility and equipment improvements that need to be done. It'll help pay for things. It'll help reimburse our endowment because we're taking money out of our endowment. But it won't solve all the problems, but it's a huge step. Conversely, if we don't build a hotel or have an income stream, then we will not be able to do some improvements that need to get done, and we will not be able to enhance the park.
Thank you. So, Mr. Curato, what do you have to say?
Could you repeat the question? I thought we were going to have different ones.
Oh, no, that's coming a little bit. This is for both of you.
Okay.
Does the passage of Measure B in the building of the hotel ensure the future of Turtle Bay?
Based upon the fact check articles that have recently come out, the hotel is not at risk of being built if the land sale does not go through. I was happy to hear Mr. Warren say that it's not the end all, because in one of their voting campaign brochures they make the statement that this will make or ensure, I think it said, the financial independence. I forgot exactly the wording, but basically said that it will make them financially independent, and in fact it won't. We believe again that this hotel can be built without selling the land, and we believe that that's how it should be done.
Okay, thanks a lot. So this next question is for both of you. Does this measure resolve the prevailing wage issue? Let's start with you, Tom.
It absolutely does not resolve the prevailing wage issue, which I will reiterate one more time as we discuss this distraction of prevailing wage, because it is a distraction. The appraisal instructions, again, were written by the buyer, and that is what was used to determine the value. And it will not eliminate prevailing wage, because when this does get sent to the DIR or the courts or however the Building Trades Council pursues after this, if it is determined in any way, shape, or form to be worth more than it was appraised at, then it will once again trigger a public subsidy requiring prevailing wage. And on May the 7th, I want to read this real quick. May the 7th, the city attorney, in response to the mayor bringing up the subject of the appraisals, the city attorney made the following statement, and I think this is important to read. If the property is going to get appraised, assuming a 99-year lease, the city's got to have assurances that the meat of the lease remains in effect for that period of time. The terms of the lease will remain in effect and not be subject to change without the city's consent. This would be accomplished through a deed restriction. As I understand, there are no deed restrictions on this land sale, and as I recall, the evening that they made the vote to approve the land sale, they actually eliminated any and all deed restrictions that were in place at that time. So what the city attorney is saying here is, if it's going to be appraised assuming the 99-year lease, then the lease needs to be kept in place the entire time through a deed restriction, and that was not done. That right there is cause to cause an attorney to probably, an administrative authority, a judge, DIR, to say this is worth more. So it will not solve the problem.
Okay.
Carole, you want
What
to
about you, Mike?
repeat the question?
Oh, sure. Do you think this Measure B will resolve the prevailing wage issue?
Well, Tom's right that the issue before the city council, or excuse me, the issue before you, the voters, is the land sale. In fact, I'm going to have to paraphrase, but I think I can come pretty close. What you'll be voting on, the question you'll be voting on is, shall the city of Reading sell 14 acres of the 60 acres that is currently leased by, to Turtle Bay to the McConnell Foundation for $157,000 more than the appraised value? That is the question that you'll be voting on. And Tom has said that he does not think, or the union's revolt does not think, that that is a fair price. Tom wasn't and I wasn't part of those negotiations between the city and between McConnell Foundation. That was separate. I will tell you that if you look at the purchase agreement and the resolution that the city council passed, it specifically said that the lease needs to stay in place. Furthermore, the city, nor McConnell Foundation, can end that lease. Turtle Bay is the lessee. You cannot end a contract on a lease by only one party. So it would require Turtle Bay to say the lease is no longer valid and we're willing to end it. They can't do it. They can't do it in a purchase agreement. They can't do it in a resolution. They cannot do that. So the sale of the property, as Tom said, is the issue. I wish, Tom, that if that was the issue, we just bring this into court rather than have a vote. Because what you're really saying is it doesn't matter how the people vote, and you brought it to a vote. What matters is the sale of the property you think is not at appraised value. Great, let's go to court and determine that. 3 appraisers said it was, but let a court decide instead of going through all this.
Well, that's a nice segue into our next question here, which is this a fair deal for the citizens of Reading? Is the $600,000 that McConnell will pay for it fair? Is it a good deal for the citizens of Reading? Mike, let's start with you on that one.
Let's start with $600,000 for 14 acres. Seems kind of low, but whoever buys that property can't do anything with it for 88 years. If the city owns the property, let's keep McConnell out of it for a minute. We, Turtle Bay, are the lessee. The city cannot arbitrarily, unilaterally come in and build a fire station or a police station or a city hall on that property. The contract that was entered into in 1992 said as long as you, Turtle Bay, put in $5 million of improvement, this property, the 60 acres in question, is yours, and you can, within certain parameters, mainly museum parameters, that has to be related to a museum in some way, you can build and do with it what you want after you go through the city planning process. So McConnell owns it. It really doesn't matter who owns it. If McConnell owns it, they cannot do anything with that property. How much would you pay for property that you can't do anything with for 88? So that's the answer without getting into the appraisals, which I am not a part of, and we may agree or disagree on the appraisals. But how much would the average citizen or businessman pay for property that they can't do anything with for the next 88 years? Not much. Is it 600,000? Is it 500? Some say it's 0. Some say it's more. I don't know. I guess if the unions decide to sue, we'll find out. But 3 appraisers said it was only worth $75,000, one appraiser, $125,000, second appraiser, and the third appraiser said $453,000. McConnell offered $157,000 more, or $600,000 for that property.
Tom, do you think it's a good deal for the citizens of Reading?
Not only do I not think it's not a good deal for the citizens of Reading, but over 7,000 people that signed our petitions do not believe it's a good deal for the city of Reading. First thing I'd like to clarify is revolt stands for residents entitled to vote, not unions entitled to vote. We have many people from the community that are helping us out and do not believe that this is a good deal at all. So I want to clarify, this is not the unions against Turtle Bay. Residents that do not believe that it's a deal for them. And again, we had over 7,000 people sign petitions stating that. I'd like to clarify a couple things. Number one, Mike keeps saying an 88-year lease. It is actually a 33-year lease with the option to renew, and it does require both parties to renew. It does state in there that there cannot be unreasonable reasons not to renew, but it does require both parties to renew. And I would say that any attorney can take that word unreasonable into court of law and argue it. So really, it's guaranteed 33 years with an option to renew for 55. As far as changing the lease, Mr. Warren is correct that it would require Turtle Bay's cooperation to change this lease. However, as it does take two people to change it, McConnell and Turtle Bay, we believe, as do many, many of the residents, that the relationship between McConnell and Turtle Bay are way too intertwined to be opposing forces for a healthy lease. They believe that McConnell can exert undue pressure over Turtle Bay because they are so heavily dependent upon them. So we don't believe that there's enough of an opposing force there. And once again, I want to say this lease was written by the buyer. It was initially written by the buyer, and that's very important to recall because that definitely has an impact upon the value of the land.
All right, thank you. This next question is for you, Tom. When the Northeastern California Building and Construction Trades Council launched the petition drive earlier this year to put the land deal on the ballot, it stressed that it wanted to let the people of Reading have a say in the. However, you now say that should voters approve the land deal, the Building Trades Council still plans to appeal it. Why did you say this should be the people's decision if you plan to appeal the vote if it doesn't go your way?
Well, first of all, I wasn't the one that said that. It was another individual, and we kind of just rolled with the situation at the time. And this has, it did initially start out as a prevailing wage issue and rolled into the petition drive. But it has escalated into much more than that. As the residents became more and more involved, it kind of split into two different factions. So we've got the residents entitled to vote on land transaction that want to stop this land sale for various different reasons. And then separate issue, you have the Northeastern California Construction Trades Council, who is looking at the prevailing wage issue and will continue to do that. Now, part of the issue is that initially one of the suggestions from the Trades Council was that if this land was purchased, it would become a private project, but it was decided, or it was intended to be purchased at full market value, which we do not believe has happened. And that is what spurned a lot of the citizens to get involved and sign the petition because they realize they don't want to lose their land forever at a greatly reduced value.
Okay, thanks. Now, Mike Warren, I have one for you. Turtle Bay has said it can't afford to pay the prevailing wages for this project, which is estimated, I think, at like $2 million, $2.5 million extra.
About a little over $3 million.
$3 million. But however, since the project has been challenged, Turtle Bay has spent considerable amount of money fighting this.
Why don't we spend the money on prevailing wage?
Yes, that's the question, yeah.
Well, first of all, what we're spending, I agree, is considerable, and every time we have to write a check to an attorney or whatnot, it kills me because to this needed nonprofit, or this nonprofit that's in need of all the resources it can get. But it's only a fraction of the amount. Let me talk about prevailing wage and credit Tom with something good or accurate. The way we came up with what prevailing wage would be is we asked the contractor to go back to all the bidders and say, what would the project be? If you bid the project, you were successful, but that was not with prevailing wage. What would it be if it was prevailing wage? And the sum that came up was $3 million. Tom is correct when he says, well, that hasn't been put out to bid. And maybe that number could be lower. Maybe it's $2.5 million, or maybe it's more than $3. I doubt, but I think it'd be probably something a little less than that. But we can't afford it. That's the problem. We can't afford even doing what we're doing, but we have to spend this money. That is a lot of money for our survival. How much would you spend if your family was in jeopardy, or how much would you spend on an attorney? You'd spend more than you'd want. Or how much would the union spend if they felt that their union was in jeopardy? Turtle Bay Hotel, we are We have some real concerns. Will it close? I don't think so, but it's going to have some real challenges for the board and for the employees there. We need to do this. We need to spend whatever it takes so that we can build this hotel that I think is good for the community, and we have an income stream that makes up for the loss that the city is no longer able to provide us in terms of revenue.
Well, I have a quick follow-up question from the one that's come in on how much you have spent so far fighting this.
You mean right now on the ballot measure?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
About 300 right now. Right at this point.
300,000.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let me go, and we do have some questions coming in from the audience as well. So let's see. One that keeps coming up that we've heard from today and from in the past. What's going to happen with the traffic there? If you build the hotel, there's only one access point in and out of that area. Are there any plans to build another access point?
That question's, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That question is best addressed to the Public Works Department of the City of Reading. They are, when any development occurs, they are the entity that determines if stoplights are needed, if overpasses are needed, if roads need to be widened. We are paying a lot of money for traffic impact fees. I don't have that figure, but our total fees are going to be just over $1 million, and a good portion of that is for traffic impact. What people forget is that, remember, the overpass was widened, was doubled, and the off-ramp was doubled. There'll be 130 cars at the most from this hotel using that. There is no plans that I know of. Nobody has told us that we have any more obligations. The city hasn't told us that. I will say, though, that on parking, the city has reserved the right in our use permit to go back within, actually not reserve the right, we have to produce a study on the parking issue down there within 2 years after the hotel is developed. So I think the city's on top of it. The traffic flow is adequate according to them, and I think you need to address, what, if any, other improvements are going to be needed in the future to the city.
Thank you. I have another question that's come up on this as well. How viable is the hotel for this community? What are the chances of this hotel succeeding in Reading? I'd like to start with Tom on this one.
Well, as far as how well it would succeed, I'm not qualified to answer that question. As far as how well it is presented to succeed would be another issue. There have been many, many numbers thrown out there by our opposition, and we believe that those numbers are very, very unbelievable. If you start a new projection starting at 200,000, and at readingrevolt.com you can see all the documentation where they elevated up to $1 million by Francie Sullivan on a radio show. Those numbers are just so far all over the place. And one of the fact check articles, a comment was made that the project has changed over the last 6 years, and in fact that a restaurant was added. But if you go to our website and look at the initial document of $200,000 projection, it shows hotel and restaurant. So that restaurant was actually there in the very beginning. And this is just one example of many of the exaggerations, if you will, on the projections that are out there that we just believe make the numbers just unbelievable. I've coined this, that it's basically manipulation through exaggeration. Now, again, I'm not going to dispute whether or not the hotel would be successful, but I am disputing how it's being sold out there under the guise of selling this land. Once again, this is a distraction because it is about the land. And we believe that the hotel can be built without selling the land, and we believe that it should be.
Okay, Mike, I want to get your input on this too, but we need to take a really quick break as we do a technical item. So we'll find out when welcome back. We're on the question about the viability of the hotel and can it be successful here in Reading? Is there room for another hotel? Will it meet the expectations that have been put for it? So, Mike, what are your views?
Well,
on
the short
that?
answer is yes. There is room for another hotel. Yes, we believe it will meet the expectations. But more importantly, others think so too. And we've done one study. A bank has done another study. A second bank has done a third study. Starwood Company has done their study. The operator has done their study. All the numbers are coming back as strong. I mean, they were strong 4 years ago, and it's stronger now. In the meantime, the Fairfield Inn on I-5 has been built. In the meantime, meaning since we started this, and another hotel over there has been built. The occupancy rate, let me say this real clearly, for the competitive set, you look at your competitive set in hotels, the occupancy rate has increased over the last few years, over the last 3 years for sure. That says there's a demand for another product. There's a demand in that. There's a demand for a 4-star. The numbers have changed, and Tom's right. I can go over the numbers and recite them ad nauseum. But when you're very transparent, as we at Turtle Bay have chosen to be, it's got like making sausage or something. You may not like the process and whatnot, so probably you shouldn't look at the process. Well, the transparency that we have had, things have changed. In the very beginning, it was a 150-room hotel, then it was 130. It was a smaller restaurant, then there was a larger restaurant. It didn't have a ballroom or a smaller ballroom. Now it has a 4,000 square foot ballroom. All of that changes, and there's some refinement too. So yeah, the numbers have changed, but the numbers to the city, the numbers to Turtle Bay have been good and strong. We estimate that the profits will be in the neighborhood of $1 million. Maybe it'll only be 800. Maybe it'll be 700. But that's more than what we have right now, and that's income that's needed. So yeah, Tom could be right that there's some shift, but I think it'll be pretty positive.
Okay, thank you. One more question that I'm kind of gleaning from a number of the spirit of some of the audience questions, so to speak, and one that I know has come up before in this issue. Can the citizens of Reading trust the McConnell Foundation on this deal and give them the benefit of the doubt that they're going to do something with this property, especially the 9 acres that no one knows quite what they're going to do with yet? Can the citizens of Reading trust what they're going to do with this? Let's start with you, Mike.
Well, the answer is track record. Short answer again is yes, they can. I mean, look at what McConnell Foundation has done for this community. They built a bridge. Some people may not like it, but they put up $22 of the $24 million to build that bridge. They have put in millions of dollars to Turtle Bay. They put in $1 million to One Safe Place for their new building. Their whole being is to help the community. What they're doing in this case, they're not helping themselves by paying $600,000, despite what people say. They're helping Turtle Bay to become successful. That's what they're doing. So I would say, and as a city manager, I had my differences at times with the McConnell Foundation, but it was never over whether what they were trying to do was good for the community. It was never over that. We couldn't put any more than $2 million when I was city manager into the bridge, and they wanted us to put in more. That's all we could afford. That was the difference, not whether the McConnell stands for good things and whether the McConnell has done good things in our community. They have. I mean, that is it's just a fact, and I don't know what Tom will answer, but I think probably in his heart of hearts he would say McConnell's good for the community, and they're good in this case. They're not planning on doing anything but buying the property, which will allow Turtle Bay to move forward as long as the vote doesn't bring this into court.
So, Tom, do you think the people of Reading can trust McConnell Foundation?
Well, first of all, clearly McConnell has done some wonderful things in this community. Very, very clearly. Nobody could deny that. Unfortunately, there is two sides to that coin, and the more I have gotten involved in this situation, the more I have heard the stories of people that have opposing views. I've not personally had a negative experience with McConnell, so I would not disparage them publicly. But I can repeat that there are a lot of people that are involved in this issue because they have problems with some of the other side of that coin. A lot of land acquisitions, et cetera, have been less than favorable, and it has given McConnell a real black eye in the community, and there are many, many people that feel that way. And so the fact that you're doing a lot of good things does not always negate some of the negative things that you do, and again, it has really hurt their reputation in the community. Now, as far as them doing good in this instance, I think they do have a lot to gain by buying this land for pennies on the dollar. I think if they really wanted to do good for the citizens of Reading, they would pay true full market value for this land, or they would pay the prevailing wage and keep the land in the public's hands. There are two other alternatives here that they can do really good things for the community. But we believe that they will benefit through this because of the valuable land that they will gain by paying this very small 15 acres of prime land near the river with freeway access in the heart of Reading is very, very valuable land. And there's a lack of transparency on what is going to happen with the other 9 acres. And so, again, it has really hurt their community, or their reputation in the community, how they've handled this situation.
Well, thanks. I'm going to give one last question from the audience here that we've received. What does the city lose or gain economically if Measure B passes and a hotel is ultimately built? Tom?
Well, the first thing that will happen is if Measure B passes, the city will lose, and when I say city, I mean the citizens, they will lose that very ownership of that very valuable land. That's the first thing that will happen. Now, there will obviously be benefits to the city if the hotel is built, which is why we believe that the citizens should not give up their land and the hotel should be built. And those benefits obviously would be tax revenues, whether you can argue the numbers or not. A lot of the benefits that they tout, I won't dispute. I might dispute the exaggeration of them, but clearly there would be benefits to the city. Another negative is selling it at this low of a value greatly impacts the long-term property taxes that are gained on that land. If it sold at true full market value, the property taxes generated would be much higher also. So there are definitely clearly advantages to having a hotel there, and there are clearly disadvantages to selling the land in the process. Thank you.
So, Mike, what do you see what the city would lose or gain economically?
Well, the gain is pretty easy. I don't see that they're losing anything, frankly. Right now, if nothing happens on that property sits vacant. It's not producing any income for the city. It's not producing any jobs. Now we get into the numbers. The sales tax will be $20,000 to the city. So the city gets 1 cent of the 7.5 cents. That 1 penny is worth $20,000 a year, and that's tax on food and beverages, basically. The property tax, figure at $14 million, which is what the hotel costs will be. That's $140,000, 1%. That's $140,000. Of that amount, about $20,000, again, $21,000 goes to the city. The big number is hotel tax, and it's a fairly simple formula. It's number of days times number of rooms times occupancy rate. We use 5%, and our competitive set is about 5 or 6% greater than that, times room cost of $140 times 10%, which is the hotel tax. All that goes to the city, and that amounts to over $500,000. So we've said $700,000 on average over 20 years. Doesn't matter. Cut it to $600,000, cut it to $500,000. It's a good sum that will go to the city hall. That's not all the taxes, but that's the city hall portion. There are 110 jobs. There's 40 construction jobs, by the way. A quarter of those are union subs. And there are 70 permanent jobs that will be associated with the hotel. And then the community gets a 4-star hotel with the back to a nonprofit. It's not, nobody else gets that money, like in San Francisco, Sacramento, or LA. It stays in our community. And finally, there's $3 million that will be spent locally by the hotel and the restaurant in our community.
Thank you very much. So now let's wrap up with closing statements. We'll start with you, Tom, on this one.
Well, actually, Mike got to do opening statements,
Oh, right.
so I should get to close, shouldn't I?
Yes, you should.
Okay.
So you go first, Mike. You are correct.
Okay. In closing, the numbers. Tom, let me first say that I enjoy getting to know Tom. He's a good person, and he is doing a good job, as a matter of fact, on representing the other side. But that's good, and he's very forthright and very honest. I don't want to get into the numbers. I'll be happy to. I'll extend an invitation to you, Tom. Come on in and go through all the numbers. Won't hold anything back, and so you can see for yourself whether we're exaggerating or not, because we don't want to exaggerate. We try to be very conservative. I'm going to close with a story. That's a young woman, young to me, is helping us in the walking, the canvassing. And she's been doing it for a number of weeks. And her name, I hope she doesn't mind, but is Brandy Green. And I asked her why she's doing this. And she says, I work at CH2M Hill. I'm an engineer, scientist. And I'm doing this, I'm working all these extra volunteer hours on her own because I think young people need to have a place other than school where they're learning about engineering and science. And I don't think there's enough of that taught. Here at Turtle Bay, that's one of your hallmarks. You're teaching about science, we're teaching about history and art, but we're teaching about science and where we can about engineering. We're exposing young people to very good learning and even entertaining process, learning about various fields. She felt that was important, and we have a letter signed by all 18 of the school superintendents saying how important it is. And I always wondered how you get 18 school superintendents to all agree. It's like herding, in this case, turtles. And it dawned on me when she told me that story, they get it. Their kids that are in their school districts need to have a place like this to go to outside the classroom to learn about the sciences, about history, about art, about animals, about horticulture. And this is an important asset that we have in our community. So I think that maybe sums up why we need the extra income, why the hotel is a good idea, and what we're going to be doing with the money. It's basically trying to make our community a better place for young people and old people like myself that can go there, enjoy themselves, be proud of it. Without the hotel, we're going to have a very, very difficult time continuing that.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, Tom, your closing thoughts.
Okay. I don't dispute that Turtle Bay is good for the community. We would not dispute that at all. It's very good for the community. We would like to see Turtle Bay continue in the community and be successful in the community. Last night at the City Council debate, one of the City Council candidates made the statement in support of Measure B that it's a win-win situation. I got to thinking about that later, and I realized she's right. It is a win-win. It's a win for Turtle Bay, which is a good thing, but it's also a win for McConnell because they get this land, very, very valuable land, for pennies on the dollar. I'd like to present another win-win scenario. How about build the hotel and keep the land public? Then it's a win for the Bay, which is good, and it's a win for the citizens of Reading. And then all the other tax revenues and everything else can continue along with the path. So I would urge you to Measure B and pursue down that path of making a win-win so that the citizens win and don't have to give up that very valuable land that they will lose forever and ever. Again, I would encourage everybody, go to readingrevolt.com. We've got over 35 documents backing up everything we say. And I think I'll just close by saying I urge you to vote no on Measure B. Thank you.
Well, thanks to both of you gentlemen for participating today. We also thank our online audience for participating, sending in questions, and commenting on this while we remember, Election Day is November 4th. Be sure to get out and vote or send in your mail-in ballot. And I hope everyone has a great day. Thanks.
Thanks, Carole.
Thank you.
Thanks.